Hey guys, tonight we're going to slow things down and sit with a story that matters. Meet Clara Thompson, a 52-year-old judge in a small Alabama town. Her life a tapestry of order and duty, yet woven with threads of a past she's tried to forget. When Marcus Reed, a man battered by years of racial prejudice, stands before her accused of a crime, he swears he didn't commit. Clara's world tilts. Their shared history, buried under decades of silence, threatens to unravel everything she believes about justice. Before we begin, please like the video and subscribe, but only if stories like this truly move you. Comment your city and the time you're watching. Now close your eyes or don't, it's your choice. Either way, you're about to witness something real. The courtroom in Fairview, Alabama hums with the low buzz of anticipation, a familiar rhythm for Judge Clara Thompson. She sits elevated behind the polished oak bench. Her black robe, crisp, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun that mirrors her disciplined life. At 52, Clara has spent 2 decades carving out a reputation as Fairview's pillar of impartiality, her rulings as steady as the town's old cottonwood trees lining Main Street. The room smells faintly of wood polish and stale coffee, a scent that grounds her as she scans the docket. Her fingers, adorned only with a simple gold band from her late husband, rest lightly on the gavel. Another day, another case or so, she thinks. The bailiff's voice cuts through the murmurs. The state of Alabama versus Marcus Reed. Clara's eyes flick to the defendant's table, and her breath catches sharp and sudden like a needle-piercing fabric. Marcus Reed, late 30s, stands shackled, his broad shoulders hunched under a faded gray suit that hangs loosely on his frame. His face, lined with exhaustion, carries a quiet defiance, but it's his eyes, deep hazel and achingly familiar, that stop her cold. Marcus. Her Marcus. The boy who once raced her through the wildflower fields behind Fairview's old mill, their laughter a rebellion against the town's unspoken rules. Clara's grip on the gavel tightens, her knuckles whitening. She forces her gaze to the case file, the words blurring. Theft, assault, convenience store. The charges feel like a betrayal, not of the law, but of the boy she knew. Fairview, a town of 10,000, is a place where history clings like humidity. Segregated schools until the 70s, whispers of us in them still lingering in church pews and diner booths. Clara and Marcus grew up on opposite sides of that divide, she in a tidy brick house on Maple Drive, he in a clapboard home on the edge of the black neighborhood where the pavement gave way to gravel. Their friendship was a secret forged in stolen moments by the creek where they'd skip stones and dream of a world less cruel. Now Marcus stands accused, and the weight of their past presses against Clara's chest. The prosecutor, Richard Hale, a wiry man in his 40s with a penchant for sharp suits, rises. Your Honor, the defendant is a repeat offender, a danger to our community, he says, his voice slick with certainty. He assaulted a clerk, stole cash, and fled. The evidence is clear. Clara's jaw clenches, but she nods, her face a mask of neutrality. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. She thinks the thought slipping through her like a whisper. Marcus's lawyer, Sarah Nguyen, young and fierce, stands to counter. My client is innocent. Your Honor, the evidence is shaky, at best blurry footage, no clear witnesses. This is a rush to judgment. Her words are a spark in the room, and Clara feels the tension shift like a storm gathering on the horizon. She glances at Marcus, who keeps his eyes fixed on the table, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles strain. The sight stirs something in her, a memory of him at 12 standing up to a bully who'd called her stuck-up. He'd taken a punch for her, his lip bloodied, but his grin unbroken. The courtroom's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows, amplifying the divide between the polished benches and Marcus's worn appearance. Clara's mind drifts to 1980, when she and Marcus were inseparable despite Fairview's disapproving stares. They'd sit under the mill's rusted water wheel, sharing dreams, hers of law school, his of opening a mechanic's shop. We'll show him, Clara, he'd said, his voice bright with hope. But hope was fragile in Fairview. Her father, a stern Baptist deacon, caught them one evening, his voice like thunder. You stay away from that boy. Clara had obeyed her silence, a wound she never healed. Marcus's family left town soon after, and she buried their friendship under ambition and time. Now Hale calls his first witness, the store clerk, a nervous young man named Tyler Brooks. He came in hood up and just lunged. Tyler stammers, avoiding Marcus's gaze. Took the cash and ran. Clara's eyes narrow. Tyler's story feels rehearsed, his words too neat for the chaos he describes. Sarah's cross-examination is swift. Mr. Brooks, You said it was dark. Did you see his face clearly? Tyler hesitates, then mumbles, not really. A murmur ripples through the jury, and Clara's heart quickens. Doubt is a powerful thing in a town like Fairview, where assumptions often outweigh evidence. Clara adjourns for this day, her robe suddenly heavy as she retreats to her chambers. The room is small, lined with law books and a single photo of her late husband James smiling on their wedding day. She sinks into her chair, her fingers tracing the gavel's smooth handle, a gift from her mentor, Judge Ellison, who told her justice is a weight you carry alone. But tonight, that weight feels unbearable. Marcus's face, so changed yet so familiar, haunts her. She remembers the last time she saw him at 14, his bike leaning against a fence as he waved goodbye. "Don't forget me, Clara," he'd said, half joking. She hadn't forgotten, but she'd let him go. Outside, Fairview's streets are quiet, the courthouse's brick facade glowing under streetlights. Clara drives home to her modest ranch house, the silence of her empty rooms amplifying her thoughts. She pours a glass of sweet tea, a habit from her mother, and sits on the porch, the cicadas hum, a faint echo of those creekside days. Marcus's case file lies open on her lap, its pages stark, a string of minor arrests, loitering, petty theft, none violent. The charges don't fit the boys she knew, but Fairview has a way of reshaping people, especially those it deems other. She thinks of the town's history, the redlined neighborhoods, the police cruisers that linger longer on certain streets. Clara's own privilege, white-educated, respected, has shielded her from that reality, but Marcus has lived it. The thought twists in her gut, sharp and accusing. She sets the file aside, her eyes drifting to the stars. Tomorrow she'll face him again, her role demanding impartiality, but her heart pulling toward a truth she can't yet name. The gavel, a symbol of her power, feels like a chain tonight, binding her to a system she's beginning to question. The Fairview courthouse wakes with the soft clatter of footsteps on marble floors, a new day's tension simmering beneath the surface. Clara Thompson, robed and resolute, takes her place at the bench, her silver hair catching the morning light streaming through high windows. The courtroom smells of old wood and anticipation, the air thick with the weight of judgment. Her fingers brush the gavel, its smooth handle a tether to her duty, but her eyes seek Marcus Reed, who sits at the defendant's table, his shackled hands still. His face a mask of weary endurance. At 38, Marcus carries the scars of Fairview's unspoken rules, his hazel eyes dulled but unyielding, a quiet fire burning beneath the surface. Clara's chest tightens, the memory of their childhood laughter by the creek, now a distant echo against the prosecutor's cold accusations. Richard Hale, the prosecutor, strides forward, his pinstripe suit as sharp as his tone. This man, he says, pointing at Marcus, is no stranger to trouble. He's a repeat offender, Your Honor, who terrorized a clerk and stole from a family-owned store. His words drip with disdain, painting Marcus as a caricature of guilt, a black man whose mere presence in Fairview invites suspicion. The jury, a mix of middle-aged locals, some with pursed lips, others with uneasy glances, leans forward in their notebooks open, but their minds half-made. Clara's jaw tightens, her neutrality, a shield she clenches like a fist. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. She thinks the phrase a quiet mantra anchoring her to the past. Sarah Nguyen, Marcus's lawyer, rises, her petite frame radiating defiance. The prosecution's case is built on sand, she says, her voice clear and cutting. No clear witnesses, no physical evidence, just assumptions. She paces her heels, clicking, and calls her first witness, Officer Daniel Carter, the arresting officer. Carter, a stocky man in his 40s with a buzz cut and a scowl, takes the stand, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I saw him 2 blocks from the store, Carter says, his voice gruff. Match the description, black male, dark clothes, acting suspicious. Sarah's eyes narrow. Suspicious how officer walking home. Carter shifts, his jaw twitching. He looked out of place. The courtroom murmurs, and Clara's heart sinks, the weight of Fairview's history pressing down. She knows this script. Black men stopped, for existing their every move, scrutinized in a town where the diner still has regular booths and other ones. Marcus's expression remains still, but his fingers curl slightly, a silent rebellion against the officer's words. Clara remembers him at 13, fixing her bike chain with steady hands, his grin wide as he said, "Can't let you ride lopsided, Clara." That boy is still there, she thinks, buried under years of a town that never gave him room to breathe. Sarah's cross-examination is relentless. Officer Carter, did you find the stolen cash on my client? Carter hesitates. No, but he could have ditched it. Could have, Sarah repeats, her tone sharp. Did you search for a red hoodie as described by the clerk? Carter's silence is damning, and a juror, a gray-haired woman in a floral dress, scribbles furiously. Clara's pulse quickens. Doubt is seeping into the room, fragile but growing. She glances at Marcus, whose eyes flicker briefly to hers, a spark of recognition that pierces her composure. She looks away, her role demanding distance, but her heart aches with the weight of their shared past. Hale redirects his voice, rising. Let's not lose focus. This man was near the crime scene, fitting the profile. He's done this before, petty theft, loitering. He's no victim. The word victim lands like a slap, and Clara sees Marcus flinch, a subtle tightening of his shoulders. She wants to stop the proceedings, to demand why Fairview's police never questioned the clerk's story, why Marcus's word carries less weight than a grainy video. But she sits silent, her gavel untouched, her silence a betrayal she feels in her bones. The day wears on, with Hale presenting the surveillance footage, a blurry, flickering image of a hooded figure grabbing at a counter. This is Marcus Reed, Hale declares, but the video is too vague, the figure's face obscured. Sarah objects, her voice steady. This could be anyone, Your Honor. The timestamp's off, the quality's poor. Clara nods, sustaining the objection, her voice calm, but her mind racing. She remembers Marcus's old dream of a mechanic's shop, his hands always steady, never violent. Could he have changed so much? Or is Fairview's lens too warped to see him clearly? Court adjourns, and Clara lingers at the bench, her fingers tracing the gavel's edge. The courtroom empties, leaving only the faint hum of lights and the ghost of Marcus's gaze. She retreats to her chambers, the photo of her late husband, James, watching from the desk. She thinks of Fairview's divides. Black families redlined into crumbling homes. White families like hers handed keys to opportunity. Her father's voice echoes, "Stay away from that boy." She'd obeyed, and Marcus paid the price. His family pushed out his dreams, ground down by a town that saw him as trouble before he could prove otherwise. Clara drives home, the courthouse's shadow stretching long behind her. Her porch is quiet, the sweet tea in her glass, a bitter reminder of nights spent avoiding Marcus's case in her mind. She opens his file again, the pages stark: arrests for loitering, a dismissed theft charge, nothing violent. Fairview's police have a pattern. She knows black men like Marcus, stopped question, charged their lives, chipped away by suspicion. She thinks of the creek where Marcus once said, "World's not fair, Clara, but we can be." His words, a motif of hope, haunt her now, a challenge she's failed to meet. She steps inside the house, too still without James's laughter. Clara's privilege has carried her far, law school, a judgeship, respect, but it's also shielded her from Marcus's reality. She imagines him now in a cell, his dreams deferred again by a system that assumes his guilt. The stars outside are faint, clouded by Fairview's streetlights, and Clara wonders if justice is possible in a town so steeped in its past. Tomorrow she'll face Marcus again, her role a cage, her heart a compass, pointing toward a truth she's only beginning to grasp. The Fairview courthouse pulses with a restless energy, its high windows catching the midday sun in slants of gold. Clara Thompson sits at the bench, her black robe a mantle of authority, but her hands tremble slightly as she adjusts her glasses. At 52, she's mastered the art of composure, but today Marcus Reed's presence unravels her. He sits at the defendant's table, his hazel eyes fixed on the floor, his shackled wrists a stark contrast to the boy who once tossed pebbles into Fairview's creek with a grin. The courtroom smells of dust and tension. The jury's murmurs, a low hum beneath the fluorescent lights. Clara's fingers graze the gavel, its weight a reminder of her duty, but her heart pulls toward Marcus, the friend she let slip away. Sarah Nguyen, Marcus's lawyer, stands with a quiet fire, her dark hair pulled back, her voice steady as she calls her next witness. The defense calls Dr. Emily Patel, forensic analyst. Patel, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a clipboard, takes the stand, her presence shifting the room's rhythm. The surveillance footage is unreliable. Patel says her tone clinical, but firm. The timestamp's manipulated, and the figure's build doesn't conclusively match Mr. Reed. Clara leans forward, her pulse quickening. The jury, a mix of skeptical locals and one young man who fidgets with his pen, scribbles notes, their faces a canvas of doubt and curiosity. Richard Hale, the prosecutor, scoffs, his arms crossed. "This is speculation, Your Honor. The video shows a crime, and Reed was nearby." Sarah counters, her voice rising. "Nearby isn't enough. Where's the hoodie, the cash? This is a rush to judgment." Clara sustains Sarah's objection. her voice calm but her mind churning. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. She thinks the phrase a tether to Marcus's childhood hope, a motif that binds her to their past. She glances at Marcus, whose shoulders square slightly, a flicker of resilience in his posture. She remembers him at 12, standing up to her father's glare, his voice steady. "I ain't scared, Clara." That courage is still there, she senses buried under Fairview's weight. The prosecution calls another witness, a neighbor named Linda Grayson, a white woman in her 60s with a pinched expression. "I saw him that night lurking near the store," she says, her voice trembling with conviction. "He looked dangerous." Clara's stomach twists. Linda's words drip with the town's old prejudices, the kind that branded Marcus trouble before he could speak. Sarah's cross-examination is surgical. "Mrs. Grayson, how well lit was the street? Could you see his face clearly?" Linda falters, her hands twisting. "It was dark, but I know what I saw." The jury shifts, a gray-haired woman in the back, narrowing her eyes. Clara sees Marcus clench his hands, his silence a shield, but his eyes burn with a quiet fury she recognizes from their youth. The courtroom's air grows heavier, Fairview's history seeping into every word. Clara knows this town, its redlined streets, its police who patrol certain neighborhoods more than others, its diner where black customers still wait longer for coffee. She's seen it from her privileged perch, a white woman whose law degree opened doors Marcus could only dream of. Her father's voice echoes, "Stay away from that boy." She'd obeyed, and Marcus's family left Fairview soon after, pushed out by whispers and glares. Now Linda's testimony feels like an extension of that betrayal, a town condemning Marcus for existing. Sarah introduces Marcus's alibi, a co-worker named Jamal Carter, a wiry man in his 30s who hesitates at the stand. "Marcus was with me that night fixing a car at my garage," Jamal says, his voice low. "We left around 10 p.m. Hale pounces. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "Mr. Carter?" Jamal's eyes dart to Marcus, then drop. "Didn't want trouble. People talk in this town." Clara's heart sinks. Fairview's fear of trouble has silenced truth before, and she sees it now in Jamal's hunched shoulders and Marcus's tight jaw. The jury's skepticism is palpable, their notebooks still. Court adjourns for lunch, and Clara retreats to her chambers, the gavel left behind like a burden. The room is quiet, the photo of her late husband, James, a steady presence on her desk. She sinks into her chair, her fingers tracing the case file. Marcus's record is sparse, minor arrests. No convictions, nothing violent. Yet Fairview's police saw him and assumed guilt, their report riddled with vague terms like suspicious behavior. She thinks of the creek where Marcus once said, "World's not fair, Clara, but we can be." His words, a recurring motif, challenge her now, a call to see beyond the bench. Outside Fairview's streets bake under the Alabama sun, the courthouse a brick sentinel of order. Clara walks to the diner across the square, a place unchanged since her childhood, checkered floors, vinyl booths, and a jukebox that still plays Patsy Cline. She orders coffee, ignoring the curious glances from locals who know her as Judge Thompson. A table of older men mutters about that Reed case, their words laced with assumption. "Always in trouble," those types, one says. Clara's grip on her mug tightens, but she holds her silence, her restraint a mirror of Marcus's own. Back in court, Sarah calls a surprise witness in, the store's night manager, a tired woman named Carla Diaz. "The clerk Tyler was jumpy that night," Carla says. "Said he didn't get a good look, but the cops pushed him to point at Reed." Hale objects, but Clara overrules her, voice steady. The revelation lands like a stone in still water, ripples spreading through the jury. Marcus lifts his head, his eyes meeting Clara's for a fleeting moment, a spark of hope in their depths. She looks away, her role a cage, but her heart races with the cracks forming in Hale's case. As the day ends, Clara lingers at the bench, the courtroom emptying like a tide receding. She thinks of Marcus's dream of a mechanic's shop, a plan Fairview never let him build. Her own dreams, law school, this judgeship came easier, her whiteness a key to doors he couldn't touch. The gavel sits heavy before her, a symbol of power she's beginning to question. She drives home, the stars of above Fairview, faint but persistent, and pours a glass of sweet tea, the taste of bittersweet echo of creekside days. Marcus's face haunts her, his silence louder than any testimony, urging her toward a truth she can't yet name. The Fairview courthouse thrums with a charged silence, the morning sun slicing through high windows to cast long shadows across the marble floor. Clara Thompson, 52, sits at the bench, her black robe a heavy mantle, her silver hair glinting under the lights. Her hands rest on the gavel, but her heart races tethered to Marcus Reed, who sits shackled at the defendant's table. At 38, Marcus's face is etched with exhaustion, but his hazel eyes burn with a quiet defiance, a spark Clara recognizes from their childhood by the creek. The courtroom smells of old paper and anticipation. The jury's gazes sharp, their notebooks worn from days of scribbling. Today the air feels different, taut like a wire ready to snap. Sarah Noyne, Marcus's lawyer, stands, her voice steady as she makes her boldest move. The defense calls Marcus Reed to the stand. A murmur ripples through the room, and Clara's breath catches her fingers tightening on the gavel. Marcus rises, his chains clinking softly, his faded suit hanging loose on his frame. He moves with a deliberate grace, his shoulders squared, as if shedding the weight of Fairview's assumptions. The jury leans forward, a mix of curiosity and skepticism in their eyes, while Richard Hale, the prosecutor, smirks, his arms crossed, confident in his flimsy case. Marcus takes the oath, his voice low but clear, and sits, his hands clasped in his lap. Sarah approaches, her eyes locked on his. "Mr. Reed, tell us about that night." Marcus inhales, his gaze sweeping the room, lingering briefly on Clara. "I was walking home from Jamal's garage," he begins, his tone raw, unpolished. "Fixed a carburetor, left around 10 p.m. Next thing I know, cops stop me, say I robbed a store. Didn't ask questions, just cuffed me." His words are steady, but a tremor betrays the weight of years spent unseen. Clara's throat tightens, the memory of their creekside talks, his dreams of a mechanic's shop, her promises to stay friends, flooding back. Sarah nods, pacing. "And what's it been like, Mr. Reed, being judged before you can speak?" Marcus's eyes darken and he leans forward, his voice rising each word, a stone dropped into the room's stillness. "I've fought my whole life to be more than what folks assume. Black man in Fairview, you're trouble before you open your mouth. Cops, neighbors, even jurors. They see me and decide I'm guilty. I'm tired, but I ain't done fighting." The courtroom falls silent, his words a thunderclap, unraveling the complacency woven into Fairview's fabric. Clara's heart pounds, her neutrality cracking, as Marcus's truth forces her to face her own silence, her failure to defy her father's command to stay away all those years ago. Hale rises, his sneers sharp. "You expect us to believe you're just a victim, Mr. Reed? Your record says otherwise. Petty theft, loitering." Marcus meets his gaze, unflinching. "Those charges dropped. Never convicted. But you don't care about that, do you? Easier to pin me as the bad guy." Hale falters, his confidence shaken, and the jury shifts, a gray-haired woman in the back wiping her eyes. Clara's fingers tremble, the gavel untouched, her role a cage she longs to break. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. She thinks Marcus's childhood words. "World's not fair, Clara, but we can be echoing as a motif, a challenge she's failed until now." Sarah rests her case and Hale scrambles to redirect, his voice shrill. "This is emotional manipulation, Your Honor. The evidence still points to Reed, but the room feels different. The jury's face is a mix of doubt, empathy, and unease. Clara adjourns for a break, her robe suffocating as she retreats to her chambers. The photo of her late husband, James, watches from the desk, his smile a reminder of the life she built on privileged law school, this judgeship, while Marcus fought for scraps in a town that branded him other. She sinks into her chair, Marcus's testimony replaying. "I've fought my whole life." She thinks of Fairview's redlined streets, the police who stop black men like Marcus for looking suspicious, the diner where black customers wait longer for coffee. Her silence back then, her obedience to her father, feels like a betrayal she can't outrun. Back in court, closing arguments begin. Hale leans on the circumstantial blurry footage, Marcus's proximity urging the jury to trust the system. Sarah counters, her voice fierce. "This isn't about one night. It's about a town, a system that judged Marcus before he could speak. Look at the evidence, not the assumptions." Clara listens, her face impassive, but her mind races. Marcus's testimony has shifted something, not just in the jury, but in her. She glances at him, his head bowed, his hands still, and sees the boy who fixed her bike, who stood up to bullies, who dreamed of more. That boy is still there fighting, and she's failed him too long. The jury deliberates and the courtroom empties, then refills, the hours crawling by. Clara lingers at the bench, the gavel a weight she can't lift. Marcus sits, his eyes fixed on the table, his silence louder than any testimony. Finally, the bailiff announces a verdict, and the room stills the air thick with anticipation. The jury foreperson, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, stands, his voice steady. In the case of Alabama versus Marcus Reed, we find the defendant not guilty. Gasps erupt, a few cheers, and Clara taps her gavel, restoring order, her voice calm but her heart soaring. Marcus's shoulders sag, relief washing over him, but his face remains guarded, the cost of this fight etched in his eyes. Clara addresses the court, her tone measured. "Mr. Reed, you are free to go. Court is adjourned." The room buzzes as people file out, but Marcus lingers, signing release papers. Clara watches, her chest tight, and then he approaches the bench, his expression a mix of gratitude and pain. "You didn't have to believe me, Clara," he says softly, his voice a whisper, meant only for her. "But you listened." She nods, her throat catching. "I should have listened sooner, Marcus." He studies her, then turns his back straight as he walks out, sunlight streaming through the doors, casting him in a glow of hard-won freedom. Clara remains, the empty courtroom a mirror of her thoughts. The verdict has exposed Hale's flimsy, Case Officer Carter's bias, Fairview's rush to condemn. But Marcus's words, "I've fought my whole life," linger, a call to do more. She thinks of the creek, their laughter, his hope against a world that wasn't fair. Her gavel, a symbol of power, feels like a tool, now one she must wield to chip away at the town's prejudices. Fairview's history is heavy, but Marcus's victory is a crack in its foundation, a step towards something better. The Fairview courthouse stands silent, its marble floors gleaming under the fading light of late afternoon. Clara Thompson, 52, lingers at the bench, her black robe draped over a chair, her silver hair loose, softening the edges of her weary face. The courtroom, empty now, feels vast, its high windows framing a sky bruised with clouds. The gavel rests before her, its smooth handle worn from years of rulings, but today it feels less like a chain and more like a key. Marcus Reed's not guilty verdict echoes in her mind, his parting words. You listened, a quiet seismic shift in her soul. The room smells of polished wood and resolve, the weight of Fairview's history pressing down, but Clara senses a new current, a possibility born from Marcus's hard-won freedom. She steps down from the bench, her heels clicking softly, and pauses at the defendant's table where Marcus sat hours ago, his hazel eyes carrying a lifetime of battles. At 38, he'd faced a town that branded him guilty before he could speak, yet his testimony, raw, unflinching, cracked open the courtroom's complacency. Clara's fingers traced the table's edge, her thoughts drifting to their childhood by the creek where wildflowers framed their dreams, and Marcus's voice, bright with hope, said, "World's not fair, Clara, but we can be." That motif, woven through their past, now anchors her, a call to reshape the justice she wields. Clara's mind replays the trial's end, the jury's verdict, shattering Richard Hale's flimsy case, blurry footage, biased witnesses, Officer Carter's hasty assumptions exposed like frayed threads. The prosecutor's sneer, once sharp, had faltered as the jury spoke, his confidence undone by Marcus's truth. Fairview's rush to condemn, rooted in redlined streets and whispered prejudices, had stumbled, if only for a moment. Clara thinks of the diner across the square where black customers still wait longer for coffee, of police cruisers lingering on certain blocks, of neighbors, like Linda Grayson, whose fear painted Marcus as dangerous without proof. Her own privilege, white, educated, respected, shielded her from that reality, but Marcus's gaze, forgiving yet piercing, stripped away her illusions. She walks to the window, the town square below, quiet as cottonwood trees swaying in the breeze. Fairview, with its 10,000 souls, clings to its past segregated schools, a fading memory, but their shadow lingers in church pews, in the way eyes follow Marcus down Main Street. Clara's father, long gone, had enforced that divide, his voice cold. "Stay away from that boy." She'd obeyed, her silence, a wound that festered when Marcus's family left, pushed out by a town that saw no place for them. Now as judge, she's upheld the law, but Marcus's fight has shown her that justice is more than verdicts. It's a reckoning with systems that bend truth to fit prejudice. Clara returns to her chambers, the photo of her late husband James a steady presence on her desk. His smile, captured on their wedding day, reminds her of the life they built, but also of the ease her whiteness afforded law school, this judgeship, a town that opened its arms. Marcus had no such key. His dreams of a mechanic's shop ground down by Fairview's suspicion. She sinks into her chair, the case file closed, its pages no longer a shield. Marcus's words, I've fought my whole life, linger a challenge to do more than rule to dismantle the biases woven into Fairview's fabric. She thinks of the creek, their laughter a rebellion, and vows to carry that spirit forward to make her bench a platform for change. Driving home, Fairview's streets glow under streetlights, the stars faint but persistent. Clara's ranch house is quiet, the porch, a sanctuary where she pours a glass of sweet tea, its taste a bittersweet echo of creekside days. She sits the night air cool and imagines Marcus now free, but scarred, his victory. A step, not an end. In a nation built on second chances, Clara knows true justice demands more than acquittals. It requires seeing people like Marcus as they are, not as Fairview assumes them to be. Her gavel, once a weight, is now a tool to chip away at prejudice, to honor the dignity Marcus fought for. She looks to the sky, the clouds parting, and feels a quiet victory, not revenge but a promise to listen, to act, to be the fairness Marcus always believed in. Clara's resolve hardens, a silent vow to Marcus, to herself, to Fairview. She can't erase the past, her silence, her father's rules, the town's divides, but she can shape the future. Each ruling, each case will carry Marcus's truth, a reminder that justice is a fight for humanity, not just law. The cicadas hum a faint echo of their childhood, and Clara smiles, small but real. Marcus's gaze, that piercing forgiveness, will guide her, a star in the dark, urging her to make Fairview a place where dreams like his can breathe.